been doing this for a while, and I began to think about retirement in a few years. And there is one thing I hope I will get before I retire. And you said, and appropriately for today, that you were going to introduce me without further ado. But once before I retire, I want to be introduced with further ado. I'm very eager to see what further ado looks like. I think about somebody on a unicycle who's juggling and I'm also very appreciative of this kind of a turnout on a very nice Sunday afternoon. We won't have many nice days left. I know what you face, but my partner Jim is here with me. He lives in Algonquin, Maine, so we know what's lying ahead. The chance to enjoy weather like this is very important. But I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad to be here among the college Democrats because, as some of you may know, I have long ago decided to identify myself as a member of a group that's often criticized, sometimes ridiculed, and doesn't get much respect. And I continue to insist that I be very clear that I am a member of that group. I'm a partisan Democrat. In the world today, there is this view that somehow there's something the matter with political parties or being committed to a party. Before I got into politics, I was going to be a professor for a variety of reasons. And I got into politics. I didn't think, for reasons that's probably obvious to you, that I would ever be a physician, be elected. So I'm making these decisions now 40 years ago, in the 60s. And so I went to graduate school to get a PhD. And I studied political science. In the end, I never completed that degree because I decided to go to politics instead, particularly into legislative work. And I have only one piece of career advice to give to younger people. I mean, most of it is just pompous nonsense. But, if you can, try to find a line of work where your strong personal characteristics are helpful and not harmful. That is, try to avoid a job where something about you is a problem. Try and find a job where something that's deeply ingrained in you is a help. In my case, there's one particular strong personality trait I have that made me really not very good at being an academic and writing and studying in that way. But particularly suited me for legislative work. I have a very short attention span. Trying to do serious scholarship, that's kind of a problem. As a legislator, if you have an hour to think about any one subject in the course of the day, you are, it's unusual. So, but the point of all this is that when I was in academics, I really studied democracy, the situation. It's the issue that most fascinates me that I think I try to carry on. There has never been a successful democratic nation, a self-governing nation, or any kind of political polity in the history of the world where you didn't have political parties. The absence of political parties means you just have personalities dominating. Political parties, it turns out there are basic kind of divisions within societies. And in America today, in particular, the political parties are very sharply differentiated. Sometimes people say, oh, there's no difference between the parties anymore. I'll give you one other piece of advice. It's not career advice, it's just intellectual advice. Whenever you hear people talk about how much better things used to be in the old days, remember that they almost certainly weren't. People like to manufacture a non-existent golden era so they can use that to criticize the president. There are very few aspects of American life in my judgment which aren't better today than they were before. That doesn't mean that they are what they should be. But I do believe we make these advances in both areas. And the argument that the parties aren't different anymore is nonsense. There is a lot more difference today between the Democratic and Republican Party. When I was studying politics in the late 50s, early 60s, you had Southern Democrats who were fairly conservative, Northern Republicans who were moderate to liberal. The Democrats were on the whole more liberal than the Republicans, but there was an intersection, maybe 20% overlap. 20% of the Republicans were more liberal than 20% of the Democrats, etc. That overlap is now less than 1%. The Southern Democrats are on the whole more, well, the Northern Republicans are more conservative than the Southern Democrats for a variety of reasons. Part of it was we had this great anomaly where the South, although it was the most conservative part of America politically, was Democratic. Democratic because of the hangover from the cold questions of slavery and the Civil War. That's gone now, it's a good thing. The South has now become one of the most Republican parts of the country. Up until 40 years ago, it was overwhelmingly Democratic. So, but what that means is that partisanship is a good thing, not a bad thing, because the division between political parties is not the division between factions in a color war at camp. It's based on real issues. And in particular, I believe that the Republican Party has become far too conservative, and I think they have moved further to the right than the Democrats have to the left. When I first got elected to the Massachusetts legislature in 1972, I was pretty bipartisan. I worked with Republicans. Former Senator Ed Buck was a Republican in Massachusetts, a moderate Republican. I worked with a lot of Republicans. That's largely gone. Mike Arcuri's predecessor, Sherwood Bowler, was a liberal to moderate Republican whom I could work with. And frankly, because he was a liberal moderate Republican I could work with, he got forced out of his job. If you look at the list, if I gave you the list of the 15 Republicans who seem to be the most amenable to bipartisanship 10 years ago, they've almost all left Congress. A couple were beaten by Democrats, but more were beaten by Republicans. And you saw that the other day here with Dee Scott-Savava. I regret her not winning in one particular regard. Like we have, one of the great things about serving in country, people from all over the country, and they have all different cultures and accents. And listening to some of my Southern colleagues pronounce Scott-Savava, and they think that they can't understand me either. I don't mean to be invidious, but the fact is that the Republicans have moved to the right. Jerry Bowler was Mike's predecessor. He was a moderate Republican, conservative in some fiscal ways, moderate in liberal in some social areas. Year after year, he had a Republican primary. Now, he could win that Republican primary with 57, 53% of the vote. Let me tell you this, you run as a member of a political party, and after 10, 12 years, even after 2 or 4 years, you expect to be elected in November, to be challenged. You expect the other party to run against you. You don't like it, by the way. I will tell you one other thing. One of the biggest lies that's told politics, oh, we ran against each other, but we're good friends. Somebody goes to the people you work for and says, he's a bum, he's no good, he doesn't know what he's doing, you should throw him out, how could you possibly keep this guy? This is not your friend. The corollary to that, by the way, is, and I think I'm particularly appreciative of what Mike told me about your campaigning effort. Campaigning, as I hope you have learned, is not fun. In fact, I have told some of the more passionate militants with whom I work, say in the gay Latin community, but it's true also with some of the conservatives who came to Washington last week. The more, if you care deeply about an issue, the more you are enjoying the activity in which you are engaged on behalf of that issue, the less likely it is to be doing any good whatsoever. Because you are almost certainly getting reinforcement from the people who agreed with you in the first place. And the challenging part is to engage not your worst enemies, because they're never going to come over,